Matthew chapter 11. 1. After Jesus had finished instructing his 12 disciples, he went on from there to teach and preach in the towns of Galilee. 2. When John heard in prison what Christ was doing, he sent his disciples. 3. Ask him, "Are you the one who was to come, or should we expect someone else?" 4. Jesus replied, "Go back and report to John what you hear and see." 5. The blind receive sight, the lame walk, those who have leprosy are cured, the deaf hear, the dead are raised, and the good news is preached to the poor. 6. Blessed is the man who does not fall away on account of me. 7. As John's disciples were leaving, Jesus began to speak to the crowd about John. "What did you go out into the desert to see? A reed swayed by the wind? 8. If not, what did you go out to see? A man dressed in fine clothes? No, those who wear fine clothes are in kings' palaces. 9. Then what did you go out to see? A prophet? Yes, I tell you, and more than a prophet. 10. This is the one about whom it is written, 'I will send my messenger ahead of you, who will prepare your way before you.' 11. I tell you the truth, among those born of women there has not risen anyone greater than John the Baptist. Yet he who is least in the kingdom of heaven is greater than he." 12. From the days of John the Baptist until now, the kingdom of heaven has been forcefully advancing, and forceful men lay hold of it. 13. For all the prophets and the law prophesied until John. 14. And if you are willing to accept it, he is the Elijah who was to come. 15. He who has ears, let him hear. 16. To what can I compare this generation? They are like children sitting in the marketplaces and calling out to others. 17. We played the flute for you, and you did not dance. We sang a dirge, and you did not mourn. 18. For John came neither eating nor drinking, and they say, he has a demon. 19. The Son of Man came eating and drinking, and they say, here is a glutton and a drunkard, a friend of tax collectors and sinners. But wisdom is proved right by her actions. 20. Then Jesus began to denounce the cities in which most of his miracles had been performed, because they did not repent. 21. Woe to you, Chorazin! Woe to you, Bethsaida! If the miracles that were performed in you had been performed in Tyre and Sidon, they would have repented long ago in sackcloth and ashes. 22. But I tell you, it will be more bearable for Tyre and Sidon on the day of judgment than for you. 23. And you, Capernaum, will you be lifted up to the skies? No, you will go down to the depths. If the miracles that were performed in you had been performed in Sodom, it would have remained to this day. 24. But I tell you that it will be more bearable for Sodom on the day of judgment than for you. 25. At that time Jesus said, I praise you, Father, Lord of heaven and earth, because you have hidden these things from the wise and learned, and revealed them to little children. 26. Yes, Father, for this was your good pleasure. 27. All things have been committed to me by my Father. No one knows the Son except the Father, and no one knows the Father except the Son and those to whom the Son chooses to reveal him. 28. Come to me, all you who are weary and burdened, and I will give you rest. 29. Take my yoke upon you and learn from me, for I am gentle and humble in heart, and you will find rest for your souls. 30. For my yoke is easy and my burden is light. Matthew chapter 12. 1. At that time Jesus went through the grain fields on the Sabbath. His disciples were hungry and began to pick some heads of grain and eat them. 2. When the Pharisees saw this, they said to him, Look, your disciples are doing what is unlawful on the Sabbath. 3. He answered, Haven't you read what David did when he and his companions were hungry? 4. He entered the house of God, and he and his companions ate the consecrated bread, which was not lawful for them to do, but only for the priests. 5. Or haven't you read in the law that on the Sabbath the priests in the temple desecrate the day and yet are innocent? 6. I tell you that one greater than the temple is here. 7. If you had known what these words mean, I desire mercy, not sacrifice, you would not have condemned the innocent. 8. For the Son of Man is Lord of the Sabbath. 9. Going on from that place, he went into their synagogue. 10. And a man with a shriveled hand was there. Looking for a reason to accuse Jesus, they asked him, Is it lawful to heal on the Sabbath? 11. He said to them, If any of you has a sheep and it falls into a pit on the Sabbath, will you not take hold of it and lift it out? 12. How much more valuable is a man than a sheep? Therefore it is lawful to do good on the Sabbath. 13. Then he said to the man, Stretch out your hand. So he stretched it out and it was completely restored, just as sound as the other. 14. But the Pharisees went out and plotted how they might kill Jesus. 15. Aware of this, Jesus withdrew from that place. Many followed him, and he healed all their sick. 16. Warning them not to tell who he was. 17. This was to fulfill what was spoken through the prophet Isaiah. 18. Here is my servant whom I have chosen, the one I love, in whom I delight. I will put my spirit on him, and he will proclaim justice to the nations. 19. He will not quarrel or cry out. No one will hear his voice in the streets. 20. A bruised reed he will not break, and a smoldering wick he will not snuff out, till he leads justice to victory. 21. In his name the nations will put their hope. 22. Then they brought him a demon-possessed man who was blind and mute, and Jesus healed him, so that he could both talk and see. 23. All the people were astonished and said, Could this be the son of David? 24. But when the Pharisees heard this, they said, It is only by Beelzebub, the prince of demons, that this fellow drives out demons. 25. Jesus knew their thoughts and said to them, Every kingdom divided against itself will be ruined, and every city or household divided against itself will not stand. 26. If Satan drives out Satan, he is divided against himself. How then can his kingdom stand? 27. And if I drive out demons by Beelzebub, by whom do your people drive them out? So then, they will be your judges. 28. But if I drive out demons by the Spirit of God, then the kingdom of God has come upon you. 29. Or again, how can anyone enter a strong man's house and carry off his possessions unless he first ties up the strong man? Then he can rob his house. 30. He who is not with me is against me, and he who does not gather with me scatters. 31. And so I tell you, every sin and blasphemy will be forgiven men, but the blasphemy against the Spirit will not be forgiven. 32. Anyone who speaks a word against the Son of Man will be forgiven, but anyone who speaks against the Holy Spirit will not be forgiven, either in this age or in the age to come. 33. Make a tree good and its fruit will be good, or make a tree bad and its fruit will be bad, for a tree is recognized by its fruit. 34. You brood of vipers, how can you who are evil say anything good? For out of the overflow of the heart the mouth speaks. 35. The good man brings good things out of the good stored up in him, and the evil man brings evil things out of the evil stored up in him. 36. But I tell you that men will have to give account on the day of judgment for every careless word they have spoken. 37. For by your words you will be acquitted, and by your words you will be condemned. 38. Then some of the Pharisees and teachers of the law said to him, Teacher, we want to see a miraculous sign from you. 39. He answered, A wicked and adulterous generation asks for a miraculous sign. But none will be given it except the sign of the prophet Jonah. 40. For as Jonah was 3 days and 3 nights in the belly of a huge fish, so the Son of Man will be 3 days and 3 nights in the heart of the earth. 41. The men of Nineveh will stand up at the judgment with this generation, and condemn it, for they repented at the preaching of Jonah, and now one greater than Jonah is here. 42. The queen of the south will rise at the judgment with this generation and condemn it. For she came from the ends of the earth to listen to Solomon's wisdom, and now one greater than Solomon is here. 43. When an evil spirit comes out of a man, It goes through arid places seeking rest and does not find it. 44. Then it says, I will return to the house I left. When it arrives, it finds the house unoccupied, swept clean and put in order. 45. Then it goes and takes with it 7 other spirits more wicked than itself, and they go in and live there. And the final condition of that man is worse than the first. That is how it will be with this wicked generation. 46. While Jesus was still talking to the crowd, his mother and brothers stood outside, wanting to speak to him. 47. Someone told him, Your mother and brothers are standing outside, wanting to speak to you. 48. He replied to him, Who is my mother, and who are my brothers? 49. Pointing to his disciples, he said, Here are my mother and my brothers. 50. For whoever does the will of my Father in heaven is my brother and sister and mother. Matthew chapter 13. 1. That same day Jesus went out of the house and sat by the lake. 2. Such large crowds gathered around him that he got into a boat and sat in it, while all the people stood on the shore. 3. Then he told them many things in parables, saying, A farmer went out to sow his seed. 4. As he was scattering the seed, some fell along the path, and the birds came and ate it up. 5. Some fell on rocky places, where it did not have much soil. It sprang up quickly, because the soil was shallow. 6. But when the sun came up, the plants were scorched, and they withered because they had no root. 7. Other seed fell among thorns, which grew up and choked the plants. 8. Still other seed fell on good soil, where it produced a crop, 160 or 30 times what was sown. 9. He who has ears, let him hear. 10. The disciples came to him and asked, Why do you speak to the people in parables? 11. He replied, The knowledge of the secrets of the kingdom of heaven has been given to you, but not to them. 12. Whoever has will be given more, and he will have an abundance. Whoever does not have, even what he has will be taken from him. 13. This is why I speak to them in parables, though seeing, they do not see, though hearing, they do not hear or understand. 14. In them is fulfilled the prophecy of Isaiah, You will be ever hearing but never understanding, you will be ever seeing but never perceiving. 15. For this people's heart has become calloused, they hardly hear with their ears, and they have closed their eyes. Otherwise they might see with their eyes, hear with their ears, understand with their hearts and turn, and I would heal them. 16. But blessed are your eyes because they see, and your ears because they hear. 17. For I tell you the truth, many prophets and righteous men longed to see what you see but did not see it, and to hear what you hear but did not hear it. 18. Listen then to what the parable of the sower means. 19. When anyone hears the message about the kingdom and does not understand it, the evil one comes and snatches away what was sown in his heart. This is the seed sown along the path. 20. The one who received the seed that fell on rocky places is the man who hears the word and at once receives it with joy. 21. But since he has no root, he lasts only a short time. When trouble or persecution comes because of the word, he quickly falls away. 22. The one who received the seed that fell among the thorns is the man who hears the word. But the worries of this life and the deceitfulness of wealth choke it, making it unfruitful. 23. But the one who received the seed that fell on good soil is the man who hears the word and understands it. He produces a crop, yielding 160 or 30 times what was sown. 24. Jesus told them another parable. The kingdom of heaven is like a man who sowed good seed in his field. 25. But while everyone was sleeping, his enemy came and sowed weeds among the wheat, and went away. 26. When the wheat sprouted and formed heads, then the weeds also appeared. 27. The owner's servants came to him and said, Sir, didn't you sow good seed in your field? Where then did the weeds come from? 28. An enemy did this, he replied. The servants asked him, Do you want us to go and pull them up? 29. No, he answered, because while you are pulling the weeds, you may root up the wheat with them. 30. Let both grow together until the harvest. At that time I will tell the harvesters, first collect the weeds and tie them in bundles to be burned, then gather the wheat and bring it into my barn. 31. He told them another parable. The kingdom of heaven is like a mustard seed, which a man took and planted in his field. 32. Though it is the smallest of all your seeds, yet when it grows, it is the largest of garden plants and becomes a tree, so that the birds of the air come and perch in its branches. 33. He told them still another parable. The kingdom of heaven is like yeast, that a woman took and mixed into a large amount of flour until it worked all through the dough. 34. Jesus spoke all these things to the crowd in parables. He did not say anything to them without using a parable. 35. So was fulfilled what was spoken through the prophet. I will open my mouth in parables. I will utter things hidden since the creation of the world. 36. Then he left the crowd and went into the house. His disciples came to him and said, "Explain to us the parable of the weeds in the field." 37. He answered, "The one who sowed the good seed is the Son of Man." 38. The field is the world, and the good seed stands for the sons of the kingdom. The weeds are the sons of the evil one. 39. And the enemy who sows them is the devil. The harvest is the end of the age, and the harvesters are angels. 40. As the weeds are pulled up and burned in the fire, so it will be at the end of the age. 41. The Son of Man will send out his angels, and they will weed out of his kingdom everything that causes sin and all who do evil. 42. They will throw them into the fiery furnace, where there will be weeping and gnashing of teeth. 43. Then the righteous will shine like the sun in the kingdom of their Father. He who has ears, let him hear. 44. The kingdom of heaven is like treasure hidden in a field. When a man found it, he hid it again, and then in his joy went and sold all he had and bought that field. 45. Again, the kingdom of heaven is like a merchant looking for fine pearls. 46. When he found one of great value, he went away and sold everything he had and bought it. 47. Once again, the kingdom of heaven is like a net that was let down into the lake and caught all kinds of fish. 48. When it was full, the fishermen pulled it up on the shore. Then they sat down and collected the good fish in baskets, but threw the bad away. 49. This is how it will be at the end of the age. The angels will come and separate the wicked from the righteous. 50. And throw them into the fiery furnace, where there will be weeping and gnashing of teeth. 51. Have you understood all these things? Jesus asked. Yes, they replied. 52. He said to them, Therefore every teacher of the law who has been instructed about the kingdom of heaven is like the owner of a house who brings out of his storeroom new treasures as well as old. 53. When Jesus had finished these parables, he moved on from there. 54. Coming to his hometown, he began teaching the people in their synagogue, and they were amazed. Where did this man get this wisdom and these miraculous powers? They asked. 55. Isn't this the carpenter's son? Isn't his mother's name Mary, and aren't his brothers James, Joseph, Simon and Judas? 56. Aren't all his sisters with us? Where then did this man get all these things? 57. And they took offense at him. But Jesus said to them, Only in his hometown and in his own house is a prophet without honor. 58. And he did not do many miracles there because of their lack of faith. Matthew chapter 14. 1. At that time Herod the Tetrarch heard the reports about Jesus. 2. And he said to his attendants, This is John the Baptist, he has risen from the dead. That is why miraculous powers are at work in him. 3. Now Herod had arrested John and bound him and put him in prison because of Herodias, his brother Philip's wife. 4. For John had been saying to him, It is not lawful for you to have her. 5. Herod wanted to kill John, but he was afraid of the people, because they considered him a prophet. 6. On Herod's birthday the daughter of Herodias danced for them and pleased Herod so much. 7. that he promised with an oath to give her whatever she asked. 8. Prompted by her mother, she said, "Give me here on a platter the head of John the Baptist." 9. The king was distressed, but because of his oaths and his dinner guests, he ordered that her request be granted. 10. And had John beheaded in the prison. 11. His head was brought in on a platter and given to the girl, who carried it to her mother. 12. John's disciples came and took his body and buried it. Then they went and told Jesus. 13. When Jesus heard what had happened, he withdrew by boat privately to a solitary place. Hearing of this, the crowds followed him on foot from the towns. 14. When Jesus landed and saw a large crowd, he had compassion on them and healed their sick. 15. As evening approached, the disciples came to him and said, "This is a remote place, and it's already getting late. Send the crowds away, so they can go to the villages and buy themselves some food." 16. Jesus replied, "They do not need to go away. You give them something to eat." 17. "We have here only 5 loaves of bread and 2 fish," they answered. 18. "Bring them here to me," he said. 19. And he directed the people to sit down on the grass. Taking the 5 loaves and the 2 fish and looking up to heaven, he gave thanks and broke the loaves. Then he gave them to the disciples, and the disciples gave them to the people. 20. They all ate and were satisfied, and the disciples picked up 12 basketfuls of broken pieces that were left over. 21. The number of those who ate was about 5,000 men, besides women and children. 22. Immediately Jesus made the disciples get into the boat and go on ahead of him to the other side, while he dismissed the crowd. 23. After he had dismissed them, he went up on a mountainside by himself to pray. When evening came, he was there alone. 24. But the boat was already a considerable distance from land, buffeted by the waves because the wind was against it. 25. During the 4th watch of the night Jesus went out to them, walking on the lake. 26. When the disciples saw him walking on the lake, they were terrified. "It's a ghost," they said, and cried out in fear. 27. But Jesus immediately said to them, "Take courage. It is I. Don't be afraid." 28. "Lord, if it's you," Peter replied, "tell me to come to you on the water." 29. "Come," he said. Then Peter got down out of the boat, walked on the water and came toward Jesus. 30. But when he saw the wind, he was afraid and, beginning to sink, cried out, "Lord, save me." 31. Immediately Jesus reached out his hand and caught him. "You of little faith," he said, "why did you doubt?" 32. And when they climbed into the boat, the wind died down. 33. Then those who were in the boat worshipped him, saying, "Truly you are the Son of God." 34. When they had crossed over, they landed at Gennesaret. 35. And when the men of that place recognized Jesus, they sent word to all the surrounding country. People brought all their sick to him. 36. And begged him to let the sick just touch the edge of his cloak, and all who touched him were healed. Matthew chapter 15. 1. Then some Pharisees and teachers of the law came to Jesus from Jerusalem and asked, 2. Why do your disciples break the tradition of the elders? They don't wash their hands before they eat. 3. Jesus replied, And why do you break the command of God for the sake of your tradition? 4. For God said, Honor your father and mother, and anyone who curses his father or mother must be put to death. 5. But you say that if a man says to his father or mother, Whatever help you might otherwise have received from me as a gift devoted to God. 6. He is not to honor his father with it. Thus you nullify the word of God for the sake of your tradition. 7. You hypocrites! Isaiah was right when he prophesied about you. 8. These people honor me with their lips, but their hearts are far from me. 9. They worship me in vain, their teachings are but rules taught by men. 10. Jesus called the crowd to him and said, Listen and understand. 11. What goes into a man's mouth does not make him unclean, but what comes out of his mouth, that is what makes him unclean. 12. Then the disciples came to him and asked, "Do you know that the Pharisees were offended when they heard this?" 13. He replied, "Every plant that my heavenly Father has not planted will be pulled up by the roots." 14. Leave them, they are blind guides. If a blind man leads a blind man, both will fall into a pit. 15. Peter said, "Explain the parable to us." 16. Are you still so dull? Jesus asked them. 17. Don't you see that whatever enters the mouth goes into the stomach and then out of the body? 18. But the things that come out of the mouth come from the heart, and these make a man unclean. 19. For out of the heart come evil thoughts, murder, adultery, sexual immorality, theft, false testimony, slander. 20. These are what make a man unclean, but eating with unwashed hands does not make him unclean. 21. Leaving that place, Jesus withdrew to the region of Tyre and Sidon. 22. A Canaanite woman from that vicinity came to him, crying out, "Lord, Son of David, have mercy on me. My daughter is suffering terribly from demon possession." 23. Jesus did not answer a word. So his disciples came to him and urged him, "Send her away, for she keeps crying out after us." 24. He answered, "I was sent only to the lost sheep of Israel." 25. The woman came and knelt before him. "Lord, help me," she said. 26. He replied, "It is not right to take the children's bread and toss it to their dogs." 27. "Yes, Lord," she said, "but even the dogs eat the crumbs that fall from their master's table." 28. Then Jesus answered, "Woman, you have great faith. Your request is granted." And her daughter was healed from that very hour. 29. Jesus left there and went along the Sea of Galilee. Then he went up on a mountainside and sat down. 30. Great crowds came to him, bringing the lame, the blind, the crippled, the mute and many others, and laid them at his feet and he healed them. 31. The people were amazed when they saw the mute speaking, the crippled made well, the lame walking and the blind seeing. And they praised the God of Israel. 32. Jesus called his disciples to him and said, "I have compassion for these people, they have already been with me 3 days and have nothing to eat. I do not want to send them away hungry, or they may collapse on the way." 33. His disciples answered, "Where could we get enough bread in this remote place to feed such a crowd?" 34. How many loaves do you have? Jesus asked. 7. They replied, and a few small fish. 35. He told the crowd to sit down on the ground. 36. Then he took the 7 loaves and the fish, and when he had given thanks, he broke them and gave them to the disciples, and they in turn to the people. 37. They all ate and were satisfied. Afterward the disciples picked up 7 basketfuls of broken pieces that were left over. 38. The number of those who ate was 4,000, besides women and children. 39. After Jesus had sent the crowd away, he got into the boat and went to the vicinity of Magadan. Matthew chapter 16. 1. The Pharisees and Sadducees came to Jesus and tested him by asking him to show them a sign from heaven. 2. He replied, "When evening comes, you say, 'It will be fair weather, for the sky is red.' 3. And in the morning, 'Today it will be stormy, for the sky is red and overcast.' You know how to interpret the appearance of the sky, but you cannot interpret the signs of the times. 4. A wicked and adulterous generation looks for a miraculous sign, but none will be given it except the sign of Jonah." Jesus then left them and went away. 5. When they went across the lake, the disciples forgot to take bread. 6. Be careful, Jesus said to them. Be on your guard against the yeast of the Pharisees and Sadducees. 7. They discussed this among themselves and said, "It is because we didn't bring any bread." 8. Aware of their discussion, Jesus asked, "You of little faith, why are you talking among yourselves about having no bread?" 9. Do you still not understand? Don't you remember the 5 loaves for the 5,000, and how many basketfuls you gathered? 10. Or the 7 loaves for the 4,000, and how many basketfuls you gathered? 11. How is it you don't understand that I was not talking to you about bread? But be on your guard against the yeast of the Pharisees and Sadducees. 12. Then they understood that he was not telling them to guard against the yeast used in bread, but against the teaching of the Pharisees and Sadducees. 13. When Jesus came to the region of Caesarea Philippi, he asked his disciples, "Who do people say the Son of Man is?" 14. They replied, "Some say John the Baptist, others say Elijah, and still others, Jeremiah or one of the prophets." 15. But what about you? He asked. Who do you say I am? 16. Simon Peter answered, You are the Christ, the Son of the living God. 17. Jesus replied, Blessed are you, Simon son of Jonah, for this was not revealed to you by man, but by my Father in heaven. 18. And I tell you that you are Peter, and on this rock I will build my church, and the gates of Hades will not overcome it. 19. I will give you the keys of the kingdom of heaven. Whatever you bind on earth will be bound in heaven, and whatever you loose on earth will be loosed in heaven. 20. Then he warned his disciples not to tell anyone that he was the Christ. 21. From that time on Jesus began to explain to his disciples that he must go to Jerusalem and suffer many things at the hands of the elders, chief priests and teachers of the law, and that he must be killed and on the third day be raised to life. 22. Peter took him aside and began to rebuke him. Never, Lord, he said. This shall never happen to you. 23. Jesus turned and said to Peter, Get behind me, Satan. You are a stumbling block to me. You do not have in mind the things of God, but the things of men. 24. Then Jesus said to his disciples, If anyone would come after me, he must deny himself and take up his cross and follow me. 25. For whoever wants to save his life will lose it, but whoever loses his life for me will find it. 26. What good will it be for a man if he gains the whole world, yet forfeits his soul? Or what can a man give in exchange for his soul? 27. For the Son of Man is going to come in his Father's glory with his angels, and then he will reward each person according to what he has done. 28. I tell you the truth, some who are standing here will not taste death before they see the Son of Man coming in his kingdom. Matthew chapter 17. 1. After 6 days Jesus took with him Peter, James and John the brother of James, and led them up a high mountain by themselves. 2. There he was transfigured before them. His face shone like the sun, and his clothes became as white as the light. 3. Just then there appeared before them Moses and Elijah, talking with Jesus. 4. Peter said to Jesus, Lord, it is good for us to be here. If you wish, I will put up 3 shelters, one for you, one for Moses and one for Elijah. 5. While he was still speaking, a bright cloud enveloped them, and a voice from the cloud said, This is my Son, whom I love, with him I am well pleased. Listen to him. 6. When the disciples heard this, they fell face down to the ground, terrified. 7. But Jesus came and touched them. Get up, he said. Don't be afraid. 8. When they looked up, they saw no one except Jesus. 9. As they were coming down the mountain, Jesus instructed them, Don't tell anyone what you have seen, until the Son of Man has been raised from the dead. 10. The disciples asked him, Why then do the teachers of the law say that Elijah must come first? 11. Jesus replied, To be sure, Elijah comes and will restore all things. 12. But I tell you, Elijah has already come, and they did not recognize him, but have done to him everything they wished. In the same way the Son of Man is going to suffer at their hands. 13. Then the disciples understood that he was talking to them about John the Baptist. 14. When they came to the crowd, a man approached Jesus and knelt before him. 15. Lord, have mercy on my son, he said. He has seizures and is suffering greatly. He often falls into the fire or into the water. 16. I brought him to your disciples, but they could not heal him. 17. O unbelieving and perverse generation, Jesus replied, how long shall I stay with you? How long shall I put up with you? Bring the boy here to me. 18. Jesus rebuked the demon, and it came out of the boy, and he was healed from that moment. 19. Then the disciples came to Jesus in private and asked, why couldn't we drive it out? 20. He replied, because you have so little faith. I tell you the truth, if you have faith as small as a mustard seed, you can say to this mountain, move from here to there, and it will move. Nothing will be impossible for you. 21. 22. When they came together in Galilee, he said to them, the Son of Man is going to be betrayed into the hands of men. 23. They will kill him, and on the third day he will be raised to life. And the disciples were filled with grief. 24. After Jesus and his disciples arrived in Capernaum, the collectors of the 2 drachma tax came to Peter and asked, doesn't your teacher pay the temple tax? 25. Yes, he does, he replied. When Peter came into the house, Jesus was the first to speak. What do you think, Simon? He asked. From whom do the kings of the earth collect duty and taxes? From their own sons or from others? 26. From others, Peter answered. Then the sons are exempt, Jesus said to him. 27. But so that we may not offend them, go to the lake and throw out your line. Take the first fish you catch, open its mouth, and you will find a 4 drachma coin. Take it and give it to them for my tax and yours. Matthew chapter 18. 1. At that time the disciples came to Jesus and asked, who is the greatest in the kingdom of heaven? 2. He called a little child and had him stand among them. 3. And he said, I tell you the truth, unless you change and become like little children, you will never enter the kingdom of heaven. 4. Therefore, whoever humbles himself like this child is the greatest in the kingdom of heaven. 5. And whoever welcomes a little child like this in my name welcomes me. 6. But if anyone causes one of these little ones who believe in me to sin, it would be better for him to have a large millstone hung around his neck and to be drowned in the depths of the sea. 7. Woe to the world because of the things that cause people to sin. Such things must come, but woe to the man through whom they come. 8. If your hand or your foot causes you to sin, cut it off and throw it away. It is better for you to enter life maimed or crippled than to have 2 hands or 2 feet and be thrown into eternal fire. 9. And if your eye causes you to sin, gouge it out and throw it away. It is better for you to enter life with 1 eye than to have 2 eyes and be thrown into the fire of hell. 10. See that you do not look down on one of these little ones. For I tell you that their angels in heaven always see the face of my Father in heaven. 11. 12. What do you think? If a man owns 100 sheep, and one of them wanders away, will he not leave the 99 on the hills and go to look for the one that wandered off? 13. And if he finds it, I tell you the truth, he is happier about that 1 sheep than about the 99 that did not wander off. 14. In the same way your Father in heaven is not willing that any of these little ones should be lost. 15. If your brother sins against you, go and show him his fault, just between the 2 of you. If he listens to you, you have won your brother over. 16. But if he will not listen, take 1 or 2 others along, so that every matter may be established by the testimony of 2 or 3 witnesses. 17. If he refuses to listen to them, tell it to the church, and if he refuses to listen even to the church, treat him as you would a pagan or a tax collector. 18. I tell you the truth, whatever you bind on earth will be bound in heaven, and whatever you loose on earth will be loosed in heaven. 19. Again, I tell you that if 2 of you on earth agree about anything you ask for, it will be done for you by my Father in heaven. 20. For where 2 or 3 come together in my name, there am I with them. 21. Then Peter came to Jesus and asked, Lord, how many times shall I forgive my brother when he sins against me? Up to 7 times? 22. Jesus answered, I tell you, not 7 times, but 77 times. 23. Therefore, the kingdom of heaven is like a king who wanted to settle accounts with his servants. 24. As he began the settlement, a man who owed him 10,000 talents was brought to him. 25. Since he was not able to pay, the master ordered that he and his wife and his children and all that he had be sold to repay the debt. 26. The servant fell on his knees before him. "Be patient with me," he begged, "and I will pay back everything." 27. The servant's master took pity on him, cancelled the debt and let him go. 28. But when that servant went out, he found one of his fellow servants who owed him 100 denarii. He grabbed him and began to choke him. "Pay back what you owe me," he demanded. 29. His fellow servant fell to his knees and begged him, "Be patient with me, and I will pay you back." 30. But he refused. Instead, he went off and had the man thrown into prison until he could pay the debt. 31. When the other servants saw what had happened, they were greatly distressed and went and told their master everything that had happened. 32. Then the master called the servant in. "You wicked servant," he said, "I cancelled all that debt of yours because you begged me to." 33. Shouldn't you have had mercy on your fellow servant just as I had on you? 34. In anger his master turned him over to the jailers to be tortured, until he should pay back all he owed. 35. This is how my heavenly Father will treat each of you unless you forgive your brother from your heart.